Hello, thank you so much for joining our community service webinar. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the community service requirement. We're going to dig into a couple of different aspects of that requirement. We're going to start off talking about why community service is important. We'll discuss what community service is. We'll talk a little bit about how you submit those hours to make sure you get credit for them, and then we'll wrap it up by talking about when those community service hours are due. But before we get into that, it's always good to highlight what that requirement is. So for students to maintain their Tennessee Promise eligibility, they must submit 8 hours of community service every semester. But before we talk about when that happens, let's talk about why it's important. Community service is really important for students, I think, in a couple of ways. The first one is it gives you an opportunity to learn about the causes that are important to your community. For a lot of students, they haven't volunteered before, so this is a good way to see what organizations exist in your community that are helping people that live in your community and providing a service to them. It gives you a really nice insight as to what's going on around you. It also gives you an opportunity to explore future career options. With Tennessee Promise and Tennessee Achieves, you can job shadow as your community service requirement. So by doing that, you're exploring future career options and learning more about the workforce that's around you. I think for a lot of students, this is super helpful, particularly when you're thinking about what you're going to study. I think a lot of students enter college unsure of what they want to do when they graduate, and they feel maybe even a little intimidated about the idea of having to decide what they're going to do at that point. You don't have to decide then, and you can use the community service opportunity as a way to do some of that exploration and learn a little bit more. And the last piece is understanding the power of volunteering. For a lot of students, again, they haven't volunteered before, and when they have, it's been maybe a small amount of time. So by volunteering 8 hours every semester, you're going to learn quite a bit about what that hour that you're completing, what that means to your community. And hopefully, at the end of the day, students that participate with Tennessee Achieves and Tennessee Promise finish their program with us as a community-minded person, as somebody that sees the value of volunteering and being involved in their community. So I think these are 3 really good ways that students can really benefit from doing community service, and this is why we consider it to be an important piece of our work. So let's talk about what community service is. In terms of Tennessee Achieves, we take a pretty broad stroke when it comes to community service. There's a lot of examples here on your page, but really when you think about it, there are 3 things you cannot do as community service. Number 1 is you cannot be paid for community service. You'll see that outlined a couple of times here on this slide, but essentially you cannot go to your job and work for free. You cannot go to your job and be paid and complete those hours. And that leads me to number 2, which means you cannot work at a place of business or like at your job and do that for free. We want you to get paid at your job, and we want you to volunteer for a community organization or something in your community that would be benefiting from those hours. So you can't work at a job for free. And number 3 is you cannot proselytize. And when I say proselytizing, what I mean is you can't share your faith. And a lot of students, when they hear that, they think that I'm saying that they can't volunteer at their church, which certainly isn't true. You can definitely and absolutely volunteer at your church. You just got to make sure that what the hours that you're completing there aren't considered sharing your faith. And if they are, then those hours wouldn't be considered acceptable. But I think what you'll find is most things that are considered community service are acceptable in our world. And even more so, taking it a little step further, we found a way for you to be able to complete those hours virtually. We know with COVID-19 pandemic, it makes it a little bit challenging to go into public and complete those community service hours in person. So we came up with this opportunity back in the spring when the pandemic began. And this is a way for students to complete community service hours in a socially distant manner online. So if you just visit our website, tnachieves.org/virtual, it'll take you to this website, and you can see a little screen grab here of some of the options. But we have over 20 community service webinars where you can learn a little bit about anything from future career options. You can see very specific things like careers in engineering, healthcare, hospitality, entertainment, education, or some really broad conversations about becoming a great leader or hearing from your peers and how their experience with Tennessee Promise has gone. And there's also some really cool information about being a successful college student, interacting with professors, picking your institution, understanding what college presidents have in mind for student success. There's some really, really good conversations that occur here, and I think it's a great way for students to get those community service hours done and do it in a way that's virtual and safe and socially distanced. So really, there's 2 ways to complete your hours today with Tennessee Promise, and that would be, number 1, obviously in person, completing those hours through some sort of organization in your community, or doing it virtually through the Tennessee Achieves virtual community service webinars. And again, you can access those at tnachieves.org/virtual, or you can just visit our homepage and navigate to those. They're pretty easy to find. They're all over our website. So the big question a lot of times is, how do I submit my community service hours? It's easy to find what to do, but how do I get those hours to you? So if you look at the screen grabs here on the slide, on the first page there, or the first image there, it's tnachieves.org. That's our homepage. If you visit our homepage, the top right-hand corner where the arrows are pointing, you'll see the Submit Community Service form. Click that link. It'll take you to the image there on the right, which is the community service form. You'll log in using some personal information. Once you're on the form, you just tell us what you did, when you did it, how many hours you worked, and you submit that. And those hours will be loaded into our system, which will accumulate as the semester progresses. So what I mean when I say that is you don't have to submit all of your community service hours at one time. You can do an hour here and an hour there, just as long as by the end of the semester you've submitted 8 hours, you'll meet that requirement. One piece I will mention is that if you complete our virtual community service hours, again, we talked about those just a second ago, if you log in and watch one of those webinars, the hour will be automatically credited to you once you watch the video. So you won't have to manually enter that through the form. You just simply log in, watch the video, hit submit, and then the hour will be credited to you. And then the last sort of question that we often receive is, when is community service due? You'll have potentially 3 community service deadlines a year. We have a little asterisk here beside the April 1st deadline. I listed this one first because I would be thinking that some of you would be current high school seniors who are currently applying for Tennessee Promise and going to be entering college next fall. And if that's the case, you'll have the option, if you're planning to attend a TCAT, to start college early. You'll be able to start college in May at a TCAT if that's what you're interested in. But the only way that you can do that and use Tennessee Promise is if you meet the April 1st community service deadline, meaning you submit 8 hours of community service by April 1st. For most of you, though, you'll be starting at a community college next fall. Your first community service deadline will be July 1st, 2021, meaning you got to submit 8 hours to our website by then, and then you'll have a following deadline every year after the July 1st deadline of a December 1st, which is for that spring semester. So potentially 3 community service deadlines a year. For most students, it ends up just being 2, just this fall and the spring, July 1st, December 1st. But remember that if you're at a TCAT, you must submit 8 hours every April as well. And if you want to use Tennessee Promise in the summer for a summer term, you do have that option after your first academic year, but you have to submit 8 hours by April 1st to authorize the funding for that summer. So keep those deadlines in mind. We have a pretty detailed layout for that also on our website, or we're also here to answer any of those questions that you have about the deadlines. So as we wrap it up, I encourage you to be creative with your community service options. This is a great way for you to get involved in your community, but we would love for you to do something that really means something to you and presents you with an opportunity to learn something new. So if you ever have questions about finding really good quality volunteer opportunities, number one, you can just visit our website, tnachieves.org, or Google Tennessee Achieves Community Service, and we have all kinds of options listed on our website. But our team is also here to help connect you with those. So if you ever have questions, feel free to reach out to me. This is my email address, ben@tnachieves.org. My phone number, 865-567-1140. That can be used as a phone call or text message anytime you have questions. I'd love to connect you with something in your community that will bring value to you and help you broaden your horizons a little bit, and hopefully maybe even inspire some career exploration for you. So thank you so much for listening to this webinar about community service. Remember, 8 hours of community service by the deadline every semester, and you'll be able to maintain your Tennessee Promise eligibility. Have a great day.